question many again level the criticism is 10 years of UPA, compare it with the 10 years of the Modi Sarkar. Growth rate better in the UPA Sarkar than it is now. If you look at the per capita income growth, again the UPA years better than the NDA years or the Modi Sarkar years. How do you respond to that criticism?
It's not a well thought through criticism at all. Although the details I will explain somewhere else. But the fact remains, after a pandemic, for the economy to have dipped and then risen back, and there was also these comments saying, okay shaped recovery hai, idhar nahi hua, udhar nahi hua, patchy ho rahi hai recovery. Nahi, recovery full hua, कोई alphabet attribute करने का आवश्यकता ही नहीं हुआ, और अभी सस्टेनेबल ग्रोथ जिससे सबका कॉन्फिडेंस, सिर्फ सरकार का नहीं, सबका कॉन्फिडेंस है कि अगले 5 साल के अंदर, जो हम प्रधानमंत्री जी बार बार कहते हैं, मेरे थर्ड टर्म में थर्ड लार्जेस्ट इकोनॉमी के और हम बढ़ रहे हैं. सो उस समय ग्रोथ ऐसे था, इस समय ग्रोथ ऐसे हैं करने वाले कंपैरिजन गलत है, क्योंकि अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी के सरकार छोड़ करके यूपीए सरकार जब बनाया, इकोनॉमी वॉज इन अ प्राइम स्टेट. उसका लाभ उठाए 2004 से 2009 तक. मगर अपने ही काम 2004 से 9 तक अगर अच्छा होता, वो सस्टेनेबल रहता 2009 से 14 तक. क्योंकि इनके ध्यान पूरे कैसे करप्शन हर डिपार्टमेंट में होना चाहिए उसके ऊपर, और भाई भतीजावाद के ऊपर, इकोनॉमी के ऊपर श्रद्धा और कमिटमेंट के साथ देश को आगे लेने वाले बात में ध्यान नहीं था. उसके कारण 9 to 14 और दूसरे विषय एक्सटर्नली भी चैलेंजेस आया फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस की वजह से. कोविड से उसको कंपेयर करो, फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस को कोविड के साथ कंपेयर करने में वो क्राइसिस कितना छोटा लगता है और कोविड कितना बड़ा लगता है. उस छोटा सा क्राइसिस को, वो भी पार्टली ग्लोबल था, उसको हैंडल करना भी समझ में नहीं आया, और अगर समझ में नहीं आया गलत तरीके से हैंडल किया, जिससे एक अच्छा सा इकोनॉमी जो 2004 में आपके हाथ में मिला, और ग्रोथ के बारे में उस पीरियड का नंबर दिखाते हुए बात करते हैं, फ्रजाइल 5 तक पहुंच गया आपके दुर्व्यवहार के कारण. कंपेयर करिए ना उसको. कोविड से पूरे दुनिया कैसे झरमराते हुए हम देखे, और फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस का असर कितना था ग्लोबली, उसको भी आप हैंडल कर नहीं पाए. और आज बोल रहे हैं कि कंपेयर करना हम कैसे हैंडल किए. पर कैपिटल कितना, पर कैपिटा जितना भी हुआ, जब आप छोड़ करके जनता आपको आशीर्वाद नहीं दिया और चले गया, फ्रजाइल 5 भी आप ही नहीं तोड़ दिया. इसीलिए कंपेयर करने वाले, कमेंट करने वाले थोड़ा सोच समझकर बात करना. 10 साल के 10 साल कंपेयर करिए.
Well, I hope Mr. P. Chidambaram is listening to your response to his criticism and his statements in a press conference held on Budget Day. But let me ask you, you have emphasized on discipline, fiscal discipline target of 5.1% of the GDP. Do you think you will be able to sustain? The fact of the matter is that you've given the direction to battery operated green energy vehicles, research and development in the country, capital investment in infrastructure, skill development. But again, people come up in infrastructure investments. The private sector has lagged behind. Most of the expenditure has been by the public sector, by the government, which has led to a high debt ratio to the GDP, which could be a red flag for the economy. And on the skill side, while you may say you've trained a lot of people, only 40%, less than 40% of the people have got placements or have got employed. So employment and participation of the private sector and the high debt ratio to GDP. Are these the red flag areas for the economy?
First of all, this debt to GDP matter is being spoken conveniently by cherry picking data. Look at the globe, look at the countries, even developed countries. Some of them and their debt to GDP ratios are stunningly different from ours in the sense they are even 300% more than, they are 200% more than. Japanese, for instance, are also very high. Many developed economies have well crossed the acceptable level of debt to GDP. And in that context, for us to be somewhere in the range of 80 and also be in the range coming downwards, to raise a red flag and say, is this a dangerous situation? And it is not a government which borrowed for no reason. Post-COVID, particularly because many such compensation had to be borrowed for, and also the states had to take that load, and many of our own programs had to be funded without stopping or cutting down the budget on many welfare schemes. If the government had to go through that period when your revenue generation had almost come to a halt, how would you expect the government to function without borrowing? It will borrow. But it was done responsibility, and that's with responsibility, and that is why it stays where it is. So I've given you the comparison between a developed country and an emerging market country like ours, and also showing how we are handling debt. Even today, making sure that your fiscal discipline is not lost, and making sure that we'll reorganize ourselves. And the borrowing that we are announcing is far lesser than what the market expected us to do. So on debt, borrowing, we've been absolutely responsible. That's my first response. The second you talked about